Lots of people are struggling with their lighting, especially with Cake Smash. So I'm going to turn this around so you can see how the session ended. All right, so here's my set. This is how we ended the set. Now earlier, my light was closer when we were doing the cake part. But then when I put her in the tub is a clawfoot tub, so she was raised up a little bit, and the light was hitting her too much, so I actually moved this back a little bit. But this is how we ended, and the reflector here during the cake part was closer that way to light the backdrop more. But then again, once I moved her positioning, I had to angle this more so it hit the side of her face because there was a really big shadow. I like shadow, but not too much. So this was just kind of evening it out a little bit. You don't want it flat, but you don't want harsh shadows either, like really, especially for a Cake Smash. You don't want the face to be half lit. So anyway, this is what it looks like, the ending lighting. Okay, so we've got, this is being feathered across. So if I come to this position here, this is where it's aiming, right? So the baby was like right there, and the light is heading this way. So the light is coming from here. It's going to bounce and reflect onto here, onto the baby in the set. The soft part of this light right here, the edge, is actually going to hit the baby because it's going to fall right on her. If you see where she was sitting, the edge of that light right there would actually brush across the front of her face. And then the harsh part of the light, which is the middle, that's the part you do not want hitting your baby. So that's aimed across to hit here. And then the reflector's hitting the light here. So anyway, I did not have the overhead lights on for the set. And I did do some video of her, so I'll post that later. But this is what the ending light looks like. I may have rolled this out just a little bit. When I was cleaning up the mess, it might have been more like that. Okay, so you just want it at the corner of your set. I think yesterday when I was trying to help someone, their light was way in the back of the room. You want it right at the corner of the set so the soft lighting will hit the baby. So any questions with that? Anything? The other reason I didn't want to tilt this more or aim at the backdrop was because I needed the one and the twinkle lights to show up. So I didn't crank my ISO, but I turned it up more than usual because I wanted those lights to show up and I didn't want to power this super high. So this was hitting the baby. The ISO was kind of taking care of the twinkle lights. My ISO, I think I did adjust my settings, like I said, when I switched from cake to bath. So ISO is 320. And normally I'm between 100 and 200. So let's see if I can get to the cake one. So it's pretty even. There is a little shadow on her side, which I like. Okay, there. And another thing, we switched the letters. You see that? So initially, I had the letters on that side and the light up one over there. But then when the baby sat down, she was wearing a leopard print top and it blended in with the letters. So we flipped them. The reason I didn't do that initially was because I didn't like the letters in front of the tiger. But when the baby sat down, I'm like, yeah, we need to move the letters away from her. And the reason I didn't just switch the light, so yeah, right? If I want the letters over there and I want the baby over here, the light would have been over here, right? That would have been an easy solution, except if you look at the balloons, the lighting is coming from the right. So I had no choice but to leave my light there. So even though I don't like the letters in front of the tiger, that was the best place for them. Make sense? So always look at where the reflectors are in your backdrop and try to put your light on that side. Would you need to use that with sessions like this? I typically do use a reflector, yes, for a Cake Smash. Just to make sure that especially if you have twinkle lights. If you have twinkle lights or something in the background that needs to glow, you're going to have to feather your main light more. Feathering meaning you turn it away from your subject more. And in that case, you're going to get some more shadow on them and you need to bounce some light back at them. If it's a nice, like let's say we're just doing a bright white set in the background and you know, just a simple garland, no lights, nothing. Then I could actually angle this straighter on. I could tilt it 45 degrees, and I may not need the reflector. But I would say whenever I have twinkle lights or light up numbers and letters, I almost always use a reflector. Didn't think about that. Which part, Ashley? And make sure after this live's done, Ashley, you go back and watch the first part, because I talked about my positioning of the light and why. And I ended up moving it a little bit, because that's another thing, guys. The reason I moved it, please check your pictures throughout the session. I can't tell you how many posts I've seen of people like, oh, I forgot to check, and all the photos are terrible. They're blown out, or, you know, whatever. I check throughout the session multiple times, but then you do have to make adjustments. So when she was sitting just on the floor eating her cake, she was much lower than when she was up in the clawfoot tub. When I put her in the clawfoot tub, this light was hitting her too harshly and we're getting hot spots on her face, or it was just too bright. So I actually moved this back some so it wasn't hitting her face directly. She was just much closer to the light when she was raised up in the tub. Oh, yes. Yeah, make sure, look at your set. Sometimes it's hard to tell, but you can look at the shadows. So, like, you can see there's shadow falling off here by elephant. So that'll give you a clue, too. And then it's really bright over here. That'll give you a clue of where the light is coming from. That's going to make your pictures look more realistic. If you put the light from the opposite way, they're not going to say, oh, that shadow's off. They're just going to be able to tell that it's fake. So if you want your backdrop to look like you did it, like it's real, match your lighting. Kids always move. Yeah, and that's the other thing. I did do mostly on my settings. I tried so I was on AFC most of the time. I did a couple times when she was pretty still use AFS, but I did do continuous for most of it. And I'd say if your kids are just moving a lot, then the safe bet would be to put this out further, because what you don't want is, like, if your light's here and the baby moves up to there, then you're going to get half of a dark face. So just to be safe, put it out farther than you think. So my shutter was at 1/200. That's what I always use for when I'm using a strobe. And for my lighting. This was actually lower than I wanted because I needed ISO. So we were at 1/128 because my ISO was up over 300. And keep in mind too, the floor is reflecting light. With a white floor, that's going to reflect a lot of light. Yes, if you lower your light, that will help a lot with that harshness. But also keep in mind the positioning, right? You want it feathered across and close. The closer it is, the softer it is. And you don't want this part of the light aiming at the baby. You want the outside part of your soft umbrella or PLM aimed at the baby. All right, guys, I'm taking off, but if you have any more questions about lighting, especially Cake Smash, let me know. Well, any lighting is fine, but this particular video was for Cake Smash. I'll talk to everyone later. Bye. Have a good one.